The other thing that's interesting to me is what you mentioned is, you and I know, because we've all spoken to people, is the finance system's been waiting for the green light. The big Web 2 companies have been waiting for a green light. There's a lot of people who've been waiting for a regulatory green light. Now, we haven't got it yet because we need regulations. But I look at the finance system, and I think one of the things you've been talking about as well is if they're going to build, there's an obvious choice for them, which is going to be Ethereum. Ethereum has the native yield, and it is the kind of IBM or Microsoft of the space. I think people are underestimating how fast finance is going to come because they've all been working on it. And it's a very likely an Ethereum ecosystem thing overall.
When regulatory approval finally clears, Ethereum is poised to lead the next major crypto surge. This bold prediction comes from Raoul Pal, CEO of Real Vision and a seasoned macro analyst. While the financial system awaits a definitive regulatory green light, significant groundwork has already been laid. Major institutions and Web 2 giants are quietly preparing for a leap into blockchain technology. In a recent interview with colleague Dan Tapiero, Raoul Pal highlighted Ethereum as the prime candidate for this transformation. With its built-in yield capabilities and reputation as a reliable, scalable ecosystem, Ethereum is positioning itself as the Microsoft of the blockchain world. Its robust infrastructure and adaptability make it the go-to platform for financial systems to innovate and integrate. Stay tuned until the end of the video as Raoul Pal and Dan Tapiero share deeper insights into their market outlook.
Stop. You don't have time. Don't miss out this 2025 bull run. Educate yourself first ahead of the crowd. We have created the ultimate step-by-step crypto cheat guide that will guide you this bull run. Unlock the secrets of crypto and make smarter investments today. Now by clicking on the link below to get your exclusive copy just under $10.
My general view is, I hear the conservative numbers, and I think it's always good to anchor yourselves on those, particularly when you're building a business. I think for me, the base case, the base case is kind of 250. So 150 low side, 250 normal, 450 blow off 2017 cycle.
By the end of 25?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Don't forget, I was 2017.
Yeah.
I sold out at 2000 just before that, the usual tax season where it falls in like March, April, May, June, right? I sold out 2000. It went up 10x in 4 months at the end of the year. 10x.
Yeah, but those are smaller numbers. We can't go up 10x.
No, but that's why I'm saying, listen, it's possible to go up 3x in the last part of the cycle if we get a very strong cycle. That's all I'm saying, is that I think that tail is because people have so much PTSD. I think it's underpriced. I'm not saying it's my base case,
but you know how much value will be added to the digital asset?
I think your number of 10 trillion is,
yeah.
I think 10 trillion is underestimating it. For this cycle, I think it's close to 12, 13, something like that this cycle.
Yeah.
I think your whole 10T idea is going to sound hilariously outdated very soon.
It brings me right back to the beginning. The first thing we discussed, you can tell where somebody entered the space because 10T will be a joke. It wasn't when it was 300 billion in 2019. 30x, people were like, "You're nuts. There's no way." But yeah, I think 10 will be too small by far, right?
Yeah, way too. I mean, I think within 10 years, if I just follow the log regression channel of market cap, or use a Bitcoin version and impute something out of it, I get to 100 trillion by 2034. Now that makes sense because all other assets are 100, 200, 300 trillion. A lot of assets are going on to this. There's going to be a lot of activity. I don't think that's wildly wrong. That kind of suggests we're only 3% there. Because it's 3 trillion today. It's
what was that first call you had? Did you call for Bitcoin? What was that very first one in that article?
So I said, I think it's worth $1 million. It's worth 700 ounces of gold at the time.
What year was that?
That was 2013.
Okay,
and I said, I'm going to discount myself by 90% because this sounds stupid to call for $1 million Bitcoin when it's 200. So I'm going to say 100 grand. So we hit my original target from 11 years ago. And I still think we'll hit the other target, which is now 700 ounces of gold is now $2 and a bit million. So I do think somewhere, and that was a bad math calculation, random numbers based on stock to flow, but it kind of feels about right.
Yeah.
You know?
I wonder, it's interesting because we're talking about these big numbers. And of course, you've got Michael Saylor out there who's, sucked a lot of air out of the room. Rightfully so. I think he's been incredible for the space. But I haven't sort of sensed as much enthusiasm yet as in previous cycles, right? Like, I don't feel somehow, I don't know, maybe it's because some of these altcoins, etc., are still down 90%. If you look at some of them, not Ripple, which is now exploded, but, some of these.
Yeah, we just started to sit in the last 2 weeks where things are doing 50% in a day. That's what brings in retail. And I know from my WhatsApp messages that people are coming back, but these were, I'm only getting back last cycle people and not new cycle people yet.
Right, so we're not above where we were in 21 in terms of emotion and this and that.
No.
I mean, it's very, I mean, if you're new to this space, you might think, oh, it's crazy, it's this, it's that. It feels very tempered. People feel like, I feel like ho-hum. Someone told me we have some companies where the founders have been in the companies they founded 7, 8, 9 years ago, and they are really tired.
Yeah.
And
it's a tough market to be in, right?
It's as I always say, it trades 5 times as long as the S&P per year, right? Because it's 24/7, 365. The S&P is only, 8 hours a day or whatever it is. And so every 1 year in the old world is like 5 years in our world. And if you started a business 9 years ago and you lived through, 3 bulls and 3 bears, that's like 40 years in the old world. And so we have, founders that are interested to sell their businesses, even though, you'd look at them and you'd say, well, why are you interested? This is the greatest business ever. You're kicking butt. You're making a huge amount of money. And they just say, like they started it from zero and now maybe they have $1 billion in it or whatever the number is. So I feel like the volatility in this space is really, really chews people up.
It does. Particularly, Dan, you know this because you see it. Building a business in a very volatile asset means that your cost base has to become flexible.
Absolutely.
That's the hardest part, right? The hardest part is the cyclicality of your revenues versus your cost base, which means every time you have a down cycle, you spend 18 months of firing people.
El Salvador continues to solidify its status as a global Bitcoin pioneer. Senior Bitcoin advisor Max Kaiser recently revealed that President Nayib Bukele has increased daily Bitcoin purchases, with plans to acquire an additional 20,000 BTC. This bold strategy highlights El Salvador's steadfast belief in Bitcoin as a game-changing asset. For Bitcoin enthusiasts, this move sends a strong bullish signal. By expanding its Bitcoin holdings, El Salvador demonstrates growing confidence in Bitcoin's long-term value and transformative potential. Large-scale acquisitions like these bolster market trust and exemplify the possibilities of national Bitcoin adoption. Now, let's return to Raoul Pal and Dan Tapiero as they delve deeper into their insight.
I think the volatility sort of going forward, next 10 years can't possibly be what it's been the last 10 years. But the way markets work, everyone always gives up at the exact wrong time.
Always.
Like it's so good. And
it's like Bitcoin ETH right now, right? That cross, you've been pointing it out. It was like,
I'm not watching the cross. I just watch the price.
I'm watching the cross and just hearing people just capitulate. ETH's a piece of shit. It's never going anywhere. They've screwed it up. Vitalik's a moron.
Right.
I'm like, we've seen this all before.
Right. And at 2,500, it was really low. 2,700 a few weeks ago, I started looking at it. And I just thought, this is way too cheap. With Bitcoin at 80,000, this is ridiculous. And I started putting out some tweets. I tweeted something last night, like ETH not dead. They kept saying ETH. And there's such like rivalry or, tribal behavior. Tribal behavior is always wrong. It's just like, buying at an emotional extreme when you feel great is always wrong. You know, selling when you are feeling bad is always wrong. So it just felt like, you know, the ETH community, I guess at the moment, doesn't really have a sailor. You know, it doesn't have a guy out there, you know, with an enormous amount of energy. I mean, you know, Vitalik's a programmer. He's thinking about stuff, you know, the nuts and bolts, as are some of the other core people.
And I think it'll be the financial system. I think people suddenly they'll be going, oh, so-and-so's building on this layer 2 and so-and-so's doing this. And then people go, oh, I get it now. My thesis was that they just overbuilt block space for where we were, but that was forward planning for a future because we're going to need a lot of block space. And Ethereum is very secure. It's interoperable across a whole bunch of EVM stuff, and nobody gets fired for building on it. And so it'll be fine. It'll be just fine.
You know, the question really is, you know, over the next year or two during this next bull phase, is there anything that we see growing? You're the exponential guy, exponentially, that we're not really focused on right now? Like, do you have one of those outlier ideas, maybe something that's starting to creep?
I think, listen, the one that I think is probably the biggest of all in terms of numbers, outside of like gaming and stuff we all know about, it's ID. It's digital ID and proof of AI, proof of humanity. It's this idea that you're saying of the security truth layer of blockchain is going to become, it's very, very important. Now, I know WorldCoin are doing it. I met another group recently doing it, but
Ledger is working on something also.
That's right. Ledger's got this as one of their big ideas. I think that's wildly underpriced because
how are we going to monetize that? I mean, how?
It's just,
we're markets guys, right? Like it's so much easier for me to, you know, figure out how a business it's connected to.
I would just say it's just on-chain activity. Just owning the token of the chain. The business, look, I don't know. They'll figure something out, but that's less interesting to me than bringing 385 million Americans and forcing them into using zero knowledge proof of who you are for all of the US government infrastructure. I mean, that creates a lot of activity. Driving licenses, all of that kind of stuff, you know. So I think that's an area. Is it investable for you? Maybe, maybe not. Don't know. I think you're right that DeFi is still wildly underpriced. I think big pools of capital like Apollo, Blackstone, you know, these huge pools will lend into these markets now. Because it's just lending markets. They know how to do this, but they've not been able to. So we can see a massive amount of liquidity coming into these.
Yeah, I love the borrowing lending business because no one wants to sell their Bitcoin. So it's obvious, makes sense.
The other one that...
Yeah, I was just saying, every cycle we get hit with something that we never, you know, anticipated. That it, you know, you were involved in the art and the NFT stuff. Does that come back?
Yeah, I mean, it's already happening. The high end of the art market is ripping and there's very little available already.
Okay.
Because it's a recycling of wealth, right? You know the art market well. As soon as people make money, they buy art. And that whole thesis plays out here. And if I'm right, it goes from 3 trillion to 100 trillion in value. Even if I'm wrong by 50%, that's a lot of wealth. A huge, preposterous amount of wealth. And art will benefit, as it always does. So that one's a decent idea. The other thing that we do need to, let me know if you've seen this yet, is an exchange essentially wrapping equities and other assets. FTX did a bit of it, but that's going to generate a lot.
I think Figure is thinking about it, you know, Mike Cagney's firm.
Yeah.
I think...
Or NASDAQ do it instead.
Kraken has talked about it.
Yeah, they were looking at buying a brokerage at one point, a traditional brokerage.
We talked about it. I think the two worlds come together. So
That's right.
I don't think the old world just disappears.
Crypto market volatility may decline over the next decade, but emerging trends are set to shape the future of blockchain adoption. Ethereum continues to stand as a foundational layer for development, offering scalability, interoperability, and trustworthiness that make it the preferred platform for financial systems. Raoul Pal and Dan Tapiero emphasize that Ethereum's overbuilt capacity is not a drawback but a strategic advantage, positioning it to handle the next wave of adoption. As the demand for block space increases, Ethereum's robust infrastructure is ready to meet the challenge. For more Daily Dose Crypto news, check out these 2 awesome videos on your screen. Click now and we will see you on the next video.